Good morrow, fellow humans. My name is Sean and I am obsessed with infinity. So welcome to this, our very first Unfoldings sessions. Unfoldings is going to be a subset of videos that I'll do every now and then when I think it's necessary or going to be entertaining or relevant or helpful, that will allow us to have a bit of a dialogue where I can respond to your comments and also unfold in a little bit more detail the ideas that we go through in the main series of Infinite Now as we discuss the chapters and so forth. So where I would like to start is with your comments. What I have found is that the people who are chiming in, and thank you very much for that, those people who are chiming in are already interpreting what I'm doing or what I'm offering through their own particular lens, which is beautiful, and that's what would be expected. The lens that they are interpreting this through is through what is essentially a metaphysical framework. Whether they're aware of that or not, that's what it is. And I do say at the start in the introduction series that their kookaburras there. I do say that this series is going to be first and foremost aimed at the material nihilist. So what is a material nihilist? Well, I've got two examples from the comments of people who have given basically the two polar ends of this idea of a metaphysical framework. The first was made by at Future Technology 7679, and Future Technology is, I would assume, a materialist. He made the comment that we are biological beings. We were also discussing whether there was any validity to the spiritual seekings that have taken place over the last few thousand years. He made the claim that any of these meditations have never brought back anything that would be considered an ultimate answer. So we were talking about whether they have any validity or any access to truth, but the point was that the fact that we were biological beings first and foremost. Okay? Now that's what materialism is. Materialism is the philosophy, is the metaphysical framework that we are essentially physical, and that the universe is essentially physical, that all that really is physicality, and anything that we tend to not consider physical, like consciousness or meaning or a conversation, these are things that emerge from physicality, but physicality is the fundamental aspect. Now, the reason why I aimed my initial writing towards that community is two reasons. One, that was essentially where I was starting from. But secondly, it's also a very popular metaphysical framework to take nowadays because it coincides so nicely with science. Science never, when it began, never really originally as natural philosophy. When it began, it never declared that materialism was the fundamental aspect of reality. It never made that declaration. And in fact, it never has made that declaration. There have been individuals who have, but the school of thought is not dictated by that metaphysical framework. What the scientific school of thought is dictated by is the fact that they were intentionally only going to discuss the measurable. That was the rule, that we could only discuss things that were measurable, that could be proven in empirical experiment. The philosophy then built from there, and we get to the science that we know and love today. All right, so they intentionally bookended their right to discuss anything outside of this framework. They didn't say that that framework was all and everything. They just said, this is what we're going to discuss. It's when science has then gone forward and been as successful as it has that you end up with a community that, like you and I, tend to go, science nailed it, they worked it out, this is what it is, we are made of atoms are made of subatomic particles, which are excitations of fields and so on, and that is what is the nature of everything. It's not the only metaphysical framework that people subscribe to, though, especially not philosophers. Philosophers are far more broad than that. Back to your comments, another one that was made by CG Matt. CG Matt and I had a bit of a back and forth for a while, but it was clear that he was more of an idealist. Now, idealism is, in a sense, the complete opposite of materialism. It's another metaphysical framework. Instead of saying that all is physical, it states that all is mind. Now, the reason that people come to that as a belief structure is that everything we know is mind. There is nothing that we have ever measured empirically that wasn't attained and experienced and known in mind. Anything that has ever been experienced or known has been an aspect of mind. Where they take the further step is that they say that is what fundamental reality is, and that anything that is physical is the abstraction of mind rather than the other way around. Okay, so that physicality emerges from mind rather than mind emerging from physicality. And he said, all is image, mind over matter. Okay. So the metaphysical frameworks that we have here are the materialism on one side and idealism on the other, and they're both examples of monism. Monism is just the school of thought that there is one type of thing, okay, one type of thing, and that everything is a manifestation out of that. The other option is dualism. Dualism states that we have mind and we have matter, and that they both exist independently, and that they both are as fundamental as one another. Okay, that's dualism. And that sort of dualism came around, or became quite popular with the thinking of René Descartes, who famously said, "I think, therefore I am." And he wasn't just saying that we are just mind, he just went, okay, I have mind, and that I can trust. So how do we then understand the rest of the world from there? And you talk about the world as having substance, and you're still talking about things as being solid, as there being a physicality that is separate from mind. So dualism, different types of monism. The other type of thinking that you might subscribe to is dual aspect monism. We will get into this in the episodes, in the main episodes, but I just wanted to give this groundwork now so that we can have a bit of a shared language and understand what I mean when I say material nihilist, and I'll come back to that shortly. So, dual aspect monism. Again, everything is coming from one fundamental starting point, but from that one starting point, we have the emergence of both mind and matter. Okay, they emerge from some sort of deeper level of reality, some deeper truth. Two ways that we can unfold dual aspect monism. Dual aspect neutral monism. One way is that they could all emerge from a deeper neutral layer. Neutral as in it's not material and it's not mental. It is some other type of thing, and that both mind and matter emerge from that. Or that there is a deeper holistic nature of which both mind, matter, and other, all three subscribe to, but not one of the three are fundamental. So these aren't the only ways that you can describe your way of looking at the world, but they are broad umbrellas, and we'll go into more detailed examples in future episodes. Right now, it would be very interesting to hear from you as to where you're coming from. What are your metaphysical frameworks? Do you consider yourself a materialist? Do you consider yourself an idealist, a dual aspect monist, a dualist? What best suits your description of reality? Now, I did say at the very start that I would describe material nihilism, material nihilists. What happens when we believe the world to be fundamentally material? What we do is we see the world as being a machine. It's no longer an organism or an event or a process. It is bits. It is ones and zeros. It is just like a machine. It is the simulation. It is something that is deconstructible, and that we can understand it in purely physical terms. If that's the case, if the world is matter, right, fundamentally matter and nothing else, and that everything else is an abstraction, matter is fundamentally real, everything else is an abstraction, then it takes away meaning. Meaning becomes something very hard to give any credence to. And when we don't have a groundwork for meaning, then nihilism is the next step. Nietzsche pointed this out. That's why his famous quote is that God is dead and we have killed him. And it is this idea that our scientific advancements have now led to a state of mass nihilism. Now, what's interesting about nihilism is it doesn't necessarily have to be bad. There is positive nihilism as well as negative nihilism. And positive nihilism is probably the one that you get most often on science documentaries, where they're talking about the beauty of the world, and it's like, yes, it's all matter and it's all mathematics and it is all just relations of bits relating to other bits, and the meaning is something that we impose upon it. But isn't that beautiful? Isn't that just enough? Isn't it mind-blowing enough to know that this is what it is? So that is positive nihilism. And whenever I talk about material nihilism, I am just as much speaking to those who are having a crisis of meaning as those that see immense beauty in the idea of physicalism and materialism. So it is not a claim of judgment in any way. As I said, it's where I'm starting from. But it is something that we will be discussing in the future episodes. And I hope that you stick around for them. There's a lot that we're going to get into. We will get into meaning as a topic. We will definitely get into the idea of truth. But right now, catered to the materialist, we're going to stay in the world of physics for a short while. And next week, as we get back to it, we're going to continue our unpicking of the concept of time. We've just spoken about ages in the last episodes, and now we're getting into what time is. So, yeah, that'll be fun. But we've got a long way to go. Thank you for sticking around. Thank you for being a part of this. If you have any further questions, comments, anything, chuck them in the comments section, and I will consider them for the next Unfoldings. Great. Thank you for being around. Much love, and I hope that you have a great week. See you later. Bye.